cadences or chords to play. No melodies or words to say, but you're still singing, and it keeps me breathing. When I fall apart into a million pieces, when I don't know where to start, you put me back together. You put me back together again. When the waters rise and the levee breaks, through your tear-filled eyes and your hands that shake, darling, I'll be steady. When you're at the end of your tired rope, when you're feeling trapped and just need to go, darling, I'll be ready. When you fall apart into a million pieces, when you don't know where to start, I'll put you back together. I'll put you back together again. I'll put you back together. I'll put you back together again. When I fall apart into a million pieces, when I don't know where to start, when I forget where my peace is, when you fall apart into a million pieces, when you don't know where to start, I'll put you back together. I'll put you back together again. You put me back together. You put me back together again. taking your time? Do you carry a heart heavy as mine? Are you walking the long road, trying to fly? Oh, I always thought you'd be the one by my side. I would fall right in to your love, 'cause I'm crashing into us, burning at both ends. For your love, let me fall again into love.
I'm just gonna talk.
I would cross the line.
Hey, it really does
In
sound
the
great.
open
Sounds great.
sea, just to be near your island, swaying your
Seriously?
breeze.
Well,
I'm building
that's a third of it, right? It's a third of it, maybe half.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to those of you coming in to the building and the room. I'm Jessica. Good to be together and hanging out. Where are you tuning in from? Remember, when we do this, listen, we call it pre-show. We know it's not a show, but this is the pre-show, which means you can start thinking, or maybe you already do, get your coffee and come to church 5 minutes early, and we just talk and hang out. It's a chance to hear some real life shenanigans. And here comes my co-anchor, Wendy.
Good morning,
Wendy,
Jess.
I was thinking about a few things because this is Ryan's wife, Wendy. We are Wendy Howell.
Ryan's
and
married to me, yes.
This is Ryan.
Ryan is my husband.
Ryan, I'm trying to flip it and say Ryan is Wendy's
Yeah,
husband.
that's right.
Wendy, tell us what you do here too.
Yes, I'm the special needs director.
Yes.
We have an incredible volunteers. Yeah.
Yes, and I thought I'll get this started because Wendy is busy with families.
I ran in here when I heard your voice.
It's okay.
I was checking in with our incredible volunteers.
Yeah, and thank you for the busy bags and stuff like that too.
That's right, yeah.
Yes. So if you have children and you're coming in, or you have thought about coming and bringing your families, you can put them in the kids.
That's right. Yes.
The kids program.
Yep, we have a dedicated volunteers, and I work with the greatest people, really.
Yeah.
They show up and they love on the kids.
Yes,
So,
yes. And it's totally like the kids. Do we still call them kids pods?
Yes, we
Yes.
do. Yep.
Okay, so they're safe number of kids pods, and those are wonderful. They watch the Kids Cast.
They do, yeah.
So if you're tuning in from home and you do the Kids Cast, it's a similar setup here, just doing them in smaller groups. If you're coming new and you're not ready to put your kids in the program yet, there's busy bags and tables.
That's right. And speaking of the Kids Cast, Jess, I have to give a huge shout out to those who participate in the Kids Cast.
Yes.
You have to watch it if you aren't watching it. Even if you don't have kids,
Actually,
give it a watch because those who put it on, it's really, really spectacular. The group of people that put it on, kudos, really. You have to watch it.
Who knows what you're going to get?
Right.
You might even get footage of me cheering in a soccer tournament in Arizona in this week's Kids Cast.
You might see a dog on there. You know, you should check it out.
I'm just leading all the parents in Go Bananas.
Go bananas.
And by the way, I was watching a dog.
Yes.
And so Arnie, the dog, is in the Kids Cast. Heads up. Yeah. So you might want to watch it. But it is true. And David, just
Isaac.
It's basically a fun kids show.
It really, really is. And it's very even entertaining for adults. So you should really check it out. We have a great group of people that put that on, and really volunteer hours that really put it on, and really skilled people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we deliver. I mean, not everybody is ready to come back for a variety of reasons too. We will put together the packets and activities, and we'll deliver them to your house.
That's right to your doorstep.
Yes, right to your doorstep. Yep. Yeah, so that's great. Now, I was thinking about you and Ryan growing up. Did you go to high school together?
No, but we did meet in high school.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, we met when we were 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. This is what's fun about the pre-show, right? We don't talk about this in the church
Grill me
service.
with all these questions that I have to answer on air.
So you went to the same church?
No, we did not. We lived an hour and a half apart, but we met in the summer at a church camp.
That's right. I love it.
Yes. Yeah, it was my very first church camp, believe it or not. And so, I mean, that was back before, which wasn't that long ago. I'm not going to make myself sound too old. But that was back before cell phones. So, like, we wrote letters to each other.
Oh,
and
sweet, for sure.
Yeah, we dated by, like, meeting each other halfway to go to the movies, you know.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for a little glimpse in to pre-how alive.
That's right. Right. We dated, like, for 5 years that way, you know. So.
I love it.
Yeah.
Very sweet. Very sweet. Yeah. Well, listen, this is a great, great service and weekend to be together. We're going to start in 1 minute. All right. Are we ready? So come on in, get your stuff. We'll see you soon.
Good morning. It's good to be with everyone here in the room. Hi to everyone watching online. If you're here, I invite you to stand up. We're going to start with some music this morning. Here we go. There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into the room where people pray, where we hear praises, he hears fear. There's a sound. There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into a room where people pray, where we hear worship, he hears faith. Awake, my soul, and sing, sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Awake, my soul, and sing, sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud.
We are invited into the story, into this place, into this hour of worship. We are invited into reflection, into community, into our own spiritual journeys. We are invited. The broken and the bruised, the hopeful, the new, the faithful, the doubting, the wandering, the waiting. We are invited because God so loved. So listen, trust the invitation, and bring your whole self. All are invited here.
There is a sound that changes things, the sound of his people on their knees. Oh, wake up, you slumbering, it's time to worship him. Awake, my soul, and sing his praise aloud. Sing his praise aloud. Awake, my soul, and sing his praise aloud. Sing his praise aloud. And when he moves, and when we pray, we stood a wall, now stands away, where every promise is amen. And when he moves, make no mistake, the bowels of hell begin to shake. All hail the Lord, all hail the King. Oh, let the King of glory enter in. Fall down on your knees and worship him. Let his praise rise up, don't hold it in. Wake my soul and sing his praise aloud. Sing his praise aloud. Oh, wake my soul and sing his praise aloud. Sing his praise aloud.
Welcome to the weekend. We're starting a journey of Lent, a brand new series, and we're full of gratitude for the memories made at ValFest. I'm Bree Williams, and here's a look back at the fun we had last Sunday. Yes, Valentine's Day was a day of record-breaking cold, but we decided to show up with our partners and living Valentines anyway. After all, we are all stuck in the middle of pandemic land, and everyone is hungry for fun and connection. Plus, we had 300 Valentine boxes to hand out, and everyone loves a red and pink Valentine's box. After church on Sunday, teams of cheerful volunteers cooked and served lunch for the workers, set up the property, and streamed into the parking lot to create living Valentines out of their cars and costumes. Soon enough, the families of Crossroads and guests from the community streamed through for a Valentine greeting. At the end, every guest was treated to a Valentine box of goodies stuffed full of love from our Partners in Family Ministries team. It was a simple day of community connection, and we needed it. Thank you to our partners. Thanks, team leaders and volunteers. It's fun to be part of Crossroads in Northern Colorado with you.
Good morning and welcome to the LiveCast. I am Wendy and it is so great to be with you. Welcome to everyone joining us online, whether it's through our online campus, Facebook, or YouTube.
Yes, great. Good morning. I'm Jessica. Good morning to you, Wendy. It's so fun to anchor with you. And welcome to all of our friends in the room and those of you online too. From me, I know you just welcomed them. But now's a good time to get your Connect card out too. So if you're in the room, we're going to pull out our paper Connect cards. If you're at home, go ahead and go to crossroadscolorado.com/gather to access the digital Connect card. So this is a place where we can receive prayer requests, conduct signups for things. It's also a great place to update your information or give us information for the first time. So whether you are a first time, second time guest, or regular attender, let us know that you are here and your information is safe with us.
Right,
Yes,
right.
go ahead.
And part of our weekly experience of gathering all together is to give and support our church. And we are so grateful for your giving. We believe that we grow in generosity through our giving. You can give online or text the word Crossroads to 77977. You can also use Venmo by searching for the email venmo@crossroadscolorado.com. If you're in the room, you can drop your offering envelope along with your Paper Connect card in the orange kiosk on your way out. I also want to thank you for giving above and beyond to our 2021 ministry emphasis, Peace is Worth It.
Yes, and this week we began our Lent journey through this Again and Again series. It's wonderful. You may have received this in the mail, and if not, and you're in the room, we have these devotionals around the room. And if you're tuning in for the first time, on that Connect card, you can check Count Me In, and we will get you email, daily devotion, scripture, prayer, art, and you can request a devotional book still. So it's not too late to join us for this journey as we lead our way up to Easter.
That's right. And we are now going to turn it back over to the band for some more great music.
Up together. Sing this with me. Promise maker, promise keeper, you finish what you began. A provision through the desert, you see through to the end. You see it through to the end. Lord, our God is ever faithful, never changing through the ages. From this darkness you will lead us, and forever we will say, you're the Lord our God. In the silence, in the waiting, so we can know you are good. raised to life. Our God is able. In His name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. Lifting up, defeating God great, raised to life. Our God is able. In His name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. For the Lord our God is able. For the Lord our God is able. You can have a seat.
I like to imagine that each year God invites me to a party. God drops me a note and says, no gifts, casual dress, come just as you are. I like to imagine that I am brave enough to go. I like to imagine that I decide that I am worth it. This was no pity invite. There is no obligatory postage. God wants me there. So I get myself together. Smudged glasses, sensitive ego, wrinkled shirt and all, I ring the doorbell a few minutes late on an account of the fact that I lost my keys twice while trying to get out the door. And I almost turned back to hide in my car, afraid that I might embarrass myself over the appetizers or small talk. But then God answers the door. And God says, you're here. And I smile because I am. And with every step past that threshold, I know that God is cheering me on. It's the pride of a parent watching their child take the first step. If I freeze, God is not disappointed. If I fall, God is not mad. But if I trust the invitation, if I move closer, I know God celebrates. Friends, you've got mail. It's an invitation to dust off your shoes, to go deeper, to trust that you're worth it, to lose your keys and your faith, and then to find them both along with your worth. You're invited. We are invited again and again and again. This invitation is for you.
Well, good morning. I love that poem. You can get that whole poem right in your devotion booklet. So if you haven't picked one of those up, or if you didn't get one in the mail, there's something wrong with you. So I'll let you deal with that with a therapist. No, if you want one, they're in the back. We'd love for everybody to be participating. And if you would like to make sure you get a weekly email that has kind of digital links to all the materials on a Lenten journey, just check the box on the Connect card. I love the line in that poem that says, this invitation is for you. By the way, my name is Ryan. I'm the lead pastor here. If you're a guest and you're in the room, thank you so much for being here. If you're tuning in online and maybe it's your first time connecting with us, thank you so much. If you're out in the atrium, way to enjoy the sun. All right, very good. This is a season of Google Meeting invites. I don't know about you, but I live in a world where I'm just always getting the Google Meeting invite, and usually there's a Zoom attachment to it. It's funny because these invites always have like yes, no, maybe, like I really have a choice, you know? I really don't ever have an option to say no to these meetings, right? The Google Meeting invite, truth be told, is not one that we love to get, right? Or the Zoom invite these days. Not all invitations that we receive are welcome. Right? Think about it. In your own mind, can you think of an invitation that you received at some point in time and all you could think about was, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get out of this? Right? Maybe you got invited over to somebody's house to help them move. Oh no, what am I going to do? Right? Because here's the truth. Some invitations are worrisome, right? We get that invite and we're really not looking forward to it. The invitation to the boss's office, right? Depending upon your boss, depending upon how they lead and how they manage, sometimes that can be a kind of a freaky thing. I worked for somebody one time who he was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right? I mean, at the end of the day, usually when the phone rang or we got the invitation, there was something wrong, right? It was just, we usually didn't want that. But some invitations are wanted, right? We long for invitations to the point where if we don't get the invite, we'll feel bad. That was kind of like me in high school. Never, ever got invited to anything. I've never been to a party in my life. True story. Like as an adult, I've been invited. You can't hardly call those, but I've never been to like the parties that, say, cool kids went to. Some of you probably haven't either, looking around the room. You know, you're like, no, I'm just kidding, right? You all have probably been invited to those parties. I never was invited. I just wasn't. And sometimes you'd feel kind of left out. Friends would go. And here's the thing about invitations. The reason why we like long for them or we avoid them is really about the who and the what, right? The who and the what of the invitation will determine our emotional response to it. Right? So if somebody that you've experienced that just doesn't bring joy into your life, let's put it that way, right? That's kind of the nicest way to say it. They're just kind of like, they're not a life giver, they're a life drainer. Like you could get the best invitation from them and you'll have to think twice about it, right? Because you're just like, oh, I don't know. Like, man, that invitation, that person, we just don't get along. I don't know if I can deal with it for 2 hours in a car or whatever it might be. But also the what plays into it. Because sometimes you could get invited to something that is so amazing, you don't really care who the who is, right? Like I would imagine if I ever got invited to a Denver Broncos game live by people who have season tickets and I know who you are in the room, right? I imagine that I could even put up with you. You know, I could totally put up with you for the car ride down there and, right? Right, you get that invitation, you go, I could put up with just about anybody. So when you hear, let me ask this question, when you hear this statement, God invites you, or God invites us again and again in, God invites us in again and again, what's your response? Well, I bet you your response has a lot to do with your experience with the way in which people have represented God, right? Your experiences with faith, culture, religion, that type of thing. And if you've had a good experience, right, if your experience kind of in faith throughout your life was one of love and grace and community, where you always felt welcomed, you know, you probably hear this and go, God invites us in again and again, and you get excited about that. But if you've had an experience where your personhood, your very existence was not welcomed, was not a part of a community of faith, where you just could never be good enough, was constantly put on you rules and regulations, when you hear this idea of God invites you in again and again, you're like, no, thank you. And so we have a lot of things that are floating around about this God that's inviting us in. We sing songs about this God. And we say, well, what does that mean? When we think about the who. Well, I'd love to just pause for a moment and ask this question before we start exploring and thinking about all the implications of Lent and God. Exactly who is this God that's inviting us into? What can we know about the nature of this God? And I think we could look at one statement of Jesus very quickly to get a really good grasp at the who that's inviting us in. And I want to look at a couple of, really it's 2 sentences that Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11, just real quick, to learn a couple things about this God that invites us in again and again. And the first thing that we'll learn from Jesus' statement in Matthew chapter 11 is that Jesus reveals that God cares. God cares for you again and again. That the one who invites us in is a caring God. This is what Jesus says. Jesus says, come to me, all you who labor and are burdened. And remember, I bring to my understanding of faith and God that Jesus is the fullest representation that we have of love of God in the flesh. And so Jesus is a great person, probably the only person to look to say, what is God like in human terms? Like, what can we expect of God? And I love this language, come to me, all you who are burdened and who labor. Like, that's a God who cares. That's a God who recognizes there's something in you that's weighing you down, and you can come to me, that invitation. Second thing we see about Jesus' statement here is that God always will invite us in to be regenerated again and again. That God is saying, hey, listen, I get that you're burdened. I get that you are heavy laden, but here's the deal. If you come to me, I will give you rest. Isn't that good? Does it say, if you come to me, I'll give you why you can do more. I'll give you the secret tips to be more effective. I'll give you how you can get there further, faster. Jesus says, come on to me here. You're burdened. You're weary. I'm going to give you rest. Why is rest so powerful? Because rest is regenerative. Right? You've been in that situation where you've had a long day and you start to get into it with your significant other, your spouse, your partner, your mom, your dad, and you know in your mind, what I need is a good night's rest. I need you to just leave me alone. And then you wake up in the morning and what? It's like nothing ever happened. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't want to do that over and over again. If you have underlying issues, you need to go solve those. Am I right? Like, I don't want to say just sleep it off and then never deal with. But there is a whole lot of things that go on in our relationships that are just a product of we're overburdened. And the purpose of rest is to regenerate. And so God offers and promises. Jesus says, come to me. And you'll find this. And rest regenerates hope. When you're feeling weary and hopeless, sleep is powerful, right? Physical rest, but spiritual rest, the way in which we just kind of like resign ourselves to not having to be in charge of the universe. Mental health is regenerated when we rest. And so we see that this God is a God who cares, is a God that says, I will regenerate you. I will fill up the storehouses of your heart where you're feeling empty. But Jesus also reveals a God that offers gentle wisdom again and again. And I think that is important, that it's gentle wisdom, because some of us know what it's like to have harsh wisdom brought into our lives. But Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. And again, there's the promise, you'll find rest. There is something to learn from God. I know that's shocking to imagine that the one behind the universe has something to offer our lives, right? But most of us, if we're honest, if we've grown up in a religious tradition, we think that this God, this creator, this love that sustains all things, really the thing that God wants to offer us is just a list of do's and don'ts. But that doesn't seem to be what Jesus is saying. Jesus says, come and learn from me, and I'm going to show you how you find rest. I'm going to show you how you live this life in a totally different way, out of the rat race. This yoke that he's referring to would be considered like a body of teachings. And a rabbi would walk around, and if you took the yoke of that rabbi on you, you were taking their way of life, their teachings, and you would learn those things. And Jesus is saying, my yoke is easy. Now, I don't know about you, but the faith environment I grew up in was anything but easy. Like, there was a lot of pressure. So I'm always fascinated to think that our religious structures, our church systems, right? If you want to become a member at some churches, you're talking about 8, 10, 12 years of your life before you could ever become it's easier to go to heaven than it is to become a member of most churches, right? I mean, but Jesus is totally the opposite. He's just like, come on to me. And here's the deal. You just got to accept my yoke, trust it, and learn, because I'm meek and humble. You can learn from me. Like, nobody wants to learn from somebody who's arrogant, full of pride, forceful. That's not Jesus. So Jesus reveals this God who says, here's the deal. I care about you. I can regenerate your heart, your emotions, the storehouses when you're feeling empty. And here's the thing. I'm going to show you wisdom and way, but it's going to be gentle, and you can receive it. You're going to get it at a pace that works for you. That's why everybody's in a different space spiritually, by the way. It's not because somebody's further or behind or anything like that. It's just because we need that wisdom. We need to be taught in ways that make sense given our own journeys in life. Here's what's amazing about this little statement. Jesus doesn't just reveal to us the who of the invitation, like what this God is like. He also reveals a bit about what God is inviting us into again and again. And I think he reiterates it at the end. He says it again, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You see, the folks that Jesus was talking to would have understood the way of any religion to be very heavy. All the commandments, all the laws, it was very performance-based. And Jesus was saying, listen, what I'm inviting you into is a way of understanding God, is a perfect, beautiful way of recognizing and understanding yourself. And it's not a performance-based yoke. It's a relationship-based yoke. So that's how wisdom is gentle, when it's found in relationship. You know, you can hear the truth from people that you know love you a lot easier than from people you don't think love you. So Jesus offers us this space to come into this relationship that says, hey, listen, here's the deal. Let's go at your pace. And this God is so mercy-filled. That's the idea of rest. That's the idea of relationship. And so what Jesus reveals to us is that the God who invites us in again and again is mercy-filled. And this God is inviting us again and again into a rest-filled way of living. Not the performance-based religion, check all the boxes, get everything done, but a way in which we find rest. And so here's the question for you, right? Just to think about. If your relationship with the universe, with God, with love, whatever words you choose to use, is it producing rest in your life, or is it producing anxiety and stress and disharmony? Because God is saying, hey, Jesus, come to me. If you're feeling that unrest, if you're feeling that discord, that harmony, that you can't fit in, you can't make it, you can't keep all those, you need to come to me and I'll teach you a better way. And I love that Jesus says all who are weary. Not just the ones that fit the mode, but everybody. Lamentations chapter 3 is our anchor verse for this Lent season, one I would encourage all of us to memorize. And it says, the Lord's acts of mercy are not exhausted. His compassion is not spent. This is written in a time where the people of Israel are exiled. Their land has been destroyed. They aren't able to practice their religion. They're trying to find meaning in it. They're trying to assign responsibility. How does this happen? And in the midst of having everything removed from their life and all that pain, they say the mercy of God is not done. We're invited into that mercy over and over again. The mercies of God are renewed each morning. Great is your faithfulness. That's the invitation. I'm going to invite Katie to come out and share with us something pretty cool. And that is that this mercy-filled God doesn't just simply invite us into something and then leave us to figure it out, but this mercy-filled God will meet us again and again. Check it out.
Hi, everyone. It's a nice day, isn't it? Oh, yeah, some sunshine, vitamin D. You soaking it up? It's free in Colorado. That's great. Did Ryan mention that the poetry reading was done by his sister? Yeah, Melissa is Ryan's sister. She lives in Maine. She and her family are part of what, when you hear us say, we've got this Orange Dots network. Yeah, they're part of it. So just wonderful stuff, wonderful artwork in this whole series. Well, there is a mercy-filled God. That's the God I want to meet with. And God meets us again and again on our spiritual journey. And Ryan's words are important because if this repeating meeting is with a scary God, a judge, able, to condemn a policeman that's pulled me over and is walking up behind my car while my heart is racing and I wonder maybe what I've done wrong or how that encounter is going to go, a parent who's impossible to please, then I'm not interested in the invitation. But if the invitation is as we just discussed, then yes, I'll step out into that. Might not be easy. There might be parts of it that are very challenging as I step this out in my spiritual journey, but I'm interested and it's worth it. My personal story of meeting with God is that even though my family wasn't very churchy, I somehow found God found me as a young child. I came to faith as a young child. And then as a young adult, I came into spiritual leadership, probably mostly because of my love for Scripture as wisdom, the poetry of Scripture, beautiful phrases like, 3 things will last forever, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. I was captured by that, and it drew me in. And then I had this driving passion for life as a spiritual journey. My highest hope was that that is true. That's what we're called into, a journey into wholeness, a journey where joy is the manifestation of this life with God. And I wanted that not only for myself, but for my household. I wanted to be in settings of that kind of wholeness and joy. I think that's what drew me into the church. I wanted to lead and work with people who understood that vision or who were on that quest for wholeness and joy. Even in our civic life, I was a social studies teacher for a little bit of time before I, did more education and stepped into this kind of leadership. And oh, how I long for wholeness and goodness and connection in our civic life. Can you imagine how I feel these days? It's kind of a hard time. But in all my experience, here's what I can say. I never found God. Like I was on it and I never found God. It was always God who found me and keeps meeting with me again and again. And I find a lot of meaning in these meetings. Most of them happen on ordinary days. Most of it is just God opening up the heavens, so to speak, and giving me some hope for something that's happening that day, giving me some joy, bring me back into connection. But some are so stunning that they've informed the trajectory of my life. And I've learned that there is a pattern in life, and the pattern is that of God's nearness and intermittent breaking into our lives at magical moments. The problem with the pattern is that it's easy to miss it, and we don't want to miss it. We don't want to miss it. Because these meetings with God not only change our everyday life, but they inform the trajectory of our lives, and we're all looking for that kind of direction. I think that spiritual direction is a common hunger, especially anyone who would find themselves accepting the invitation to be here at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, right? We're looking for spiritual direction. Well, there's a story in the Gospel of Mark where again and again, God meets Jesus. And this is a short story because that's Mark's writing style. Crisp, fast-paced, and full of meaning. So in just 7 words, we see how 3 significant events in the life of Jesus set Mark on a course to fulfill God's vision, or a part of God's vision, a significant element of the vision for humankind. And God met Jesus at his baptism, in his wilderness experience, and also in the arrest of John the Baptist. So let's read, and then we'll double back through those 3 significant events. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove on him. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." And the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days, tempted by Satan, and was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him. Now, after John was arrested, Jesus came to Galilee, proclaiming the good news of God. So let's double back and look closely at the series of meetings. The first is that God meets Jesus in his baptism. His cousin John had been preaching in the rural areas outlying Jerusalem, in a region near Jerusalem. And crowds of people from the whole rural region, as well as the city center, are meeting up at the Jordan River outside the city for baptism. And that was a sign that they wanted to change their hearts and their lives. It was a moment of cultural conversion. There was widespread openness to sweeping change around spiritual and political life. And the crowds were eager for new. That's the setting. Now, Mark tells us nothing about Jesus' life prior to these coming out moments. Instead, he notes that Jesus has traveled over 100 kilometers from his home stomping grounds north of Jerusalem in Galilee, and he has come to take part in this stir, this cultural stir, and this kind of awakening in civic and spiritual life. And we might expect a spiritual and political Messiah, as we understand Jesus to be, to greet the new followers at the big meeting place, out in the marketplace where they've congregated, to greet them like a king or a president with an inauguration and a series of executive orders and speeches to persuade, get his agenda through. But instead, Jesus steps in line with all the common folk and just blends in with the community at the edge of the river. And what's notable about this action of Christ is Jesus' solidarity with the poor and the oppressed. Mark is intentional, and he's painting this picture. Jesus is aligning himself with the poor and the oppressed. He doesn't seek attention, but as soon as the water meets his body, a moment happens. The God moment, the stunning moment. In your Lent devotional, there's this illustration of a painting. It's called I Delight in You. It's Reverend Liesl Gwynn Garrity, and then she makes commentary on her painting. There it is. That's Reverend Liesl's painting. I Delight in You. And we see this man wading into the water and opening up to receive God's favor, and it falls on him like rain. And then the voice comes, "You're my beloved, my child. I'm pleased with who you are." And in this meeting, God in human flesh stands alongside those that he will lead and invite and teach and heal. And at the same time, God in spirit meets Jesus at the water's edge, and it's the threshold of something new. That's what baptism is. It's a threshold. It's the edge of something. Before Jesus begins to work or proves himself, God claims him as family. And from this identity of connected with God, everything else will flow. That's the source of power. That identity, that essence, that nature that Ryan was talking about in the opening. God met Jesus at baptism, and then God meets Jesus in his wilderness. And the wilderness is the place where character is tested. Jesus' character was tested. He's been to the water's edge. He's seen the crowds. They're excited for what he has. He knows he's a teacher, and he's got it, and he knows God. And so his character is tested. The Spirit leads him out into the wilderness. Perhaps the Spirit's saying, so, my son, my beloved, how are we going to accomplish this vision? How are we going to conduct ourselves on the course of this difficult mission? And then there's an accuser, the Satan. And the accuser knows that humans are too wounded to be trustworthy with God's vision or God's power. And so there is this testing. The things the accuser is saying, they're not untrue about how human beings use their connection with God. Jesus is being tested, and it's not fun. Jesus is confronted through the accuser's comments. How are you going to use the power that's inherent in your deep connection with your Father? Are you going to use it to help people? You're going to use it to control people. What's your understanding of the spiritual life? Is it a bag of secret tricks, a little magic wand, presto changeo, I can affect the future? I've got God on my side. If I've got God on my side, I can jump off this building and my God will catch me. Have you heard this kind of spirituality? I don't have to wear a mask. I don't have to wear a mask in a raging pandemic. I'm not afraid of a little bit of flu because God made me invisible. Besides, I have faith. If my number's up and it's my time to die, I know I'm with God. If we have that kind of confidence, we should have faith and not be afraid. Well, Jesus was tested for spiritually abusive attitudes, presumptuous attitudes, and he was found trustworthy. And in the wilderness, God was near to Jesus and comforted him because the wilderness is hell. It's awful to have our character tested. The text says that angels waited on Jesus. I've heard it said, well, God was absent in the wilderness. That's what wilderness is. God turned his back on Jesus on the cross. That was a necessary part of it. I'm not so sure about that. I think God is always closer than air. But there are times in our journey when we need additional spiritual companions just to make it through. It's so awful. It's so difficult. But God was there, met Jesus. And then the final meeting scene is when his cousin John is arrested. And the text makes a point out of that. And that God met Jesus in the arrest of John the Baptist. The text says that after John was arrested, and this is important, Jesus returned to Galilee, the stomping grounds, his people, and began proclaiming the good news of God. He began his teaching and his healing ministry without John's help. That's what the arrest represents. And God meets us when there's an arrest. It must have been a hard experience. Affirmed by God at the Jordan, and then all these rigors of the wilderness, and then an arrest. So it is a plan B moment. An arrest is the plan B moment, and God was there. God's there in the arrest. And there's a common thread in all of these meetings, and we don't want to miss the thread. The common thread is God's closeness. In pivotal meetings, moments with God, God's extraordinarily present with Jesus and those around him for good reason. And so what does this mean to us as peacemakers? God meets us again and again. There's that pattern of Jesus's life, and we can see it in our lives. What does that mean for us as peacemakers, which is what we call ourselves as disciples here at Crossroads? The first poem in this week's devotions that's in your daily your Lent devotional is called Remember When. So one of the things we do is we look back and we can remember when, just the way Mark did on Jesus' life. Remember when God has met you again and again. We can look back. I remember when God invited me into something new. It's happened several times in my life, but the most stunning probably was getting invited into the new thing of working here at Crossroads. I was very excited. I felt God's favor. Perhaps you've stepped into an opportunity before where you feel affirmed, you're excited, you feel valued. And then soon after that moment, I went into a wilderness where my character was tested, and it was brutal. I was a female pastor in senior leadership in a somewhat mega church, and a decade ago, that was unheard of. And it set off a horrible testing for me. I became a lightning rod of sorts for criticism. Then the whole church did. But the real testing for me was not in the brutality of the accusers. The real character test, and by the way, I learned in these moments, the character test is not given to us by our accusers. It's given by God. The real meeting is with God. The accusers may be part of the whole experience, and it may be part of the events within the wilderness, but the meeting was with God, asking me critical questions. You wanted to lead in a large setting. How's that going for you? How exactly do you plan to accomplish this mission and all its difficulties with your human dignity intact on a day-to-day basis? What will be your leadership ethic? What is your vision of the spiritual life? Because if you keep talking about it, there will be resistance. There will be conflict. There are elements to the vision of the spiritual life that Ryan was just talking about with Jesus that is in conflict with some people's image of God. It will be hard. How committed are you to this vision? And what protective armor are you using that you've just brought into your life to make it through the territory that needs to be set down in the arena for a different kind of showing up and vulnerability? I answered to God in the wilderness, and God was close, and God sent friends to help me. When we look back on our lives, those are the kinds of things that we see. Eventually, we emerge from the wilderness, human dignity restored, able to proclaim the good news. I remember waking up in bed one time, a couple years after the worst of this ordeal, and just realizing, my heart is happy again. I have some joy. Psalm 40, verses 1 through 3. He lifted me up out of the pit, put a new song in my heart, set my feet on solid ground, and many will hear this song and put their faith in God. So you get the picture, and you can look back. You can remember your meetings with God, that God meets you again and again to establish your identity as beloved, favored, enough, okay, all that, for character testing. And that's really equipping. And then to be sent out. New song. What new element of God's good news do you now have that can be incorporated into your life, your daily peacemaking leadership, whatever that might be? And when God meets you, peacemakers, it signals a shift. And that's big. We shift from a mud pit to solid ground with a new song. We shift from navel gazing to community, our orientation of life, from, how is this affecting my career, to, what is God doing out there? And what new bonds are to be created in my life? We shift from infantile spiritual demands of what we want it all to be like to justice for all. And we shift away from behaviors, the character test, away from behaviors that interfere with God's vision for the world. And it never stops happening throughout our lives. It's again and again that our mercy-filled God meets us at the edge of something good, the threshold. It's not a landing pad, it's a passageway. into a new thing, into new space. And remember that we don't go out to find God. We don't engineer these meetings. We don't. God, it just keeps happening. We look back and say, oh, God, we met there and there and there and there. Amazing grace. The song doesn't say, I once was lost and then I found God. It says, I once was lost and now, and this is a statement of identity, I am found. That is my name, found, seen, connected, and the finder is off the page of the poem. The finder is implied in all of it. The finder is the creator in all of that. But there's something that we can do. We can pray. We can accept the invitation and we can meet God in prayer. And you will need a prayer world. And I offer that phrase to you for this whole Lenten journey, prayer world, instead of prayer life. Because to me, world is richer. Like, world implies, okay, there's a time and a rhythm. There's the rising of the sun and the setting of the same. There's time involved in creating a prayer world. What will your rhythm be? A prayer world is a world of good ideas. That's why scripture reading or spiritual reading is always a part of spiritual journey or being a healthy spiritual person, because we need good ideas, wise ideas to create this world, as versus all kinds of competing ideas that maybe don't belong in our heads or they've taken an improper place. And then also I would say world because there's sacred space involved. For many people, a prayer world is about knowing when you're out in nature, standing by a river, sitting under a tree, sitting in your backyard with your beloved dog at your feet. I mean, there is a natural, God's creation is very good, and there's a natural element of creating a prayer world where I think most people who have created one and to whom their prayer world is very important, there's some element of creation, and then also probably space within one's own home. And in our Week of Ash Wednesday devotional spiritual direction, we were in Matthew chapter 6, where Jesus talks about when you pray, go to a quiet place and close the door. So there's also some space elements there. But I'm just barely touching on it because really the Lent journey is meant, the devotional journey and the daily direction is really meant to help us develop a prayer world. Because having that prayer world in combination with this grace-filled life where God comes again and again. We come to Jesus in the prayer world. Come to me, all who are weary. Jesus, God, the Spirit, brings the moments into our life that set the trajectory, or in one stunning moment can change, our outlook on a day. Those kinds of things. That's the supernatural, God-imbued part of all of this. So what is God inviting you into today? It might be to accept a better invitation into a mercy-filled life with God. You may be in a place, and I think the band's coming out. If not, I just made a lot of space for them that they don't need, but here they come. It may be to accept that better invitation. That might be really good news to you, and good news that you need to really hang out on for a while, camp out on for a while, because that's not an easy shift to make from God as a judge to God as caring and filled with mercy. It might be to step into a new prayer world, and that takes a work on our part, creative work on our part, and that journey of Lent will give you some resources for that. At the end of 40 days, I think you will find, oh, I'm kind of living in a new world, and it's pretty good. Or it might be to step out from some spiritual understandings that were pretty individually focused to that justice for all idea, to start or join a peacemaking project, to serve those on the margins, to take up that attitude of Jesus, that whatever spiritual goods I might have are really to be shared. And I am, I'm shoulder to shoulder with people who really need that. So it could be a peacemaking project. It could be something you start. It could be something that you join. During this next song, you'll have a minute to think about what is God inviting me into today and to find that focus or make a commitment. And the song is called Beloved, and that's our starting place, our identity as beloved. The same words that Jesus heard God speak from the Spirit at his baptism are words that we can hear again and again.
You've owned your fear and all your self-loathing. You've owned the voices inside of your head. You've owned the shame and reproach of your failure. It's time to own your belovedness. You've owned your past and how it's defined you. You've owned everything everybody else says. It's time to hear what your Father has spoken. It's time to own your belovedness. And he says you're mine. I smiled when I made you. I find you beautiful in every way. My love for you is fierce and unending. I'll come to find you, whatever it takes, my beloved. You've owned the mess you've seen in the mirror. You've owned the lies that you're just not enough. You've been so blinded by all your comparing. Now it's time to own your beloved. And he says you're mine. I smiled when I made you. I find you beautiful in every way. My love for you is fierce and unending. I'll come to find you, whatever it takes, my beloved.
All at once and in every moment. We believe that God meets us where we are, in heartbreak and high hopes, around crowded tables and in quiet homes, in joy and in suffering, in loneliness and in connection, in sanctuaries and in living rooms, in marches and in waiting rooms. We believe that nothing we do or leave undone can distance us from God's love. God is forever drawing us close and pulling us in. Again and again, God meets us where we are and invites us into wholeness. Thanks be to God for a love like that.
You are completely loved and fully known. Beloved, believe he died to make your heart his home. And he says you're mine. I smiled when I made you. I find you beautiful in every way. My love for you is fierce and unending. I'll come to find you, whatever it takes. He says you're mine. I smiled when I made you. I find you beautiful in every way. And my love for you is fierce and unending. I'll come to find you, whatever it takes, my beloved. It's time to own your beloved.
It's been a good morning. Thank you for tuning in online and being a part of it. Yeah, give them a big hand, everybody. It's great. Hit that like button if you're at home. So I hope you had a meaningful experience today. I hope you launched this season of Lent with a sense of purpose. I hope you walk away from here knowing a couple of things. That God invites us in again and again, and it is a mercy-filled God. And that this mercy-filled God meets us again and again. Next week, we continue our Lent journey, and we'll be exploring how God invites us to listen again and again. If you're here in the room and you'd like to pray with somebody, there's something going on in your heart, in your life that you would just love somebody to agree with you on, we have some folks here that would love to pray with you. If you're online, you can just click that live prayer button on the online campus. I want to encourage those that are in the room to fill out that regular Connect card, drop it in the orange Hope is Here kiosk in the back along with your offering envelope. If you're online tuning in, would you fill out that digital Connect card? Thank you for giving digitally, supporting this work. You can give by texting Crossroads to 77977, or you can click on that link. Do me a favor, everybody. Have an awesome week. Look for opportunities to be the hands and feet of Jesus by loving those who you might not naturally look to love. We'll see you next Thursday or Sunday. Thanks for tuning in.
Sunset gold on the firelit shore, and save me from the southern winter's hold, but leave me yours. Redemption glows in the face of everyone, everyone. I caught your soul in the face of everyone, but it's your turn to run. Close our eyes and we're invisible, so they won't know where we built our fortress out of stone and called it home. Redemption glows in the face of everyone, everyone. I caught your soul in the face of everyone, but it's your turn to run. I wish love was an easy song to write, 'cause I'd have pages worth of words that were not lies. Your name would be the melody that's on my tongue. Oh, if love was a simple song. There are no words that have been written or been sung that my ears have heard, or I've cheapened with my tongue, that hold the weight of this thing that we call love. Oh, love's not a simple song, but my songs feel, though not pretty or poetic, I hope you know it's true. I'm not perfect in my ways, and I let you down most days. No, it's true, but darling, I love you. And I've got a rhythm and a melody I like, but without you by my side, there's no harmony or rhymes. Just a freight train rolling down the tracks of a lonely night. Oh, love, you are worth the fight, 'cause my songs feel, though not pretty or poetic, I hope you know it's true. I'm not perfect in my ways, and I let you down most days. But no, it's true, but darling, I love you. Yeah, my soul, it's for you. And although sometimes it's pathetic, I hope you know it's true. I'm not perfect in my ways, and I mess most of my days. But no, it's true, but darling, I love you. Yeah, I love you. Yes, I do.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, I'm Jess,
And I'm Wendy. Yes.
yeah, and we're here to hang out. So if you're jumping online Remember, as you jump online with us on the weekend, no matter who's anchoring, we jump on 5 minutes till, and we just hang out and have fun.
That's right. We talk to each other and join in.
We
Tell us where
learn
you're
things.
tuning in from.
Yeah. Tell us where you're tuning in from, and I'm going to pull it up now. I wonder if, Wendy, if you want to pull, I can pull up Facebook on my phone. Anyway, let's see. Where are you tuning in from? This is so fun. We have people tuning in all around the world every single week. So we love it. And we love when you drop that in and let us know. Now, you could be on Facebook. You could be on YouTube. So you can't tell us where you're tuning in
In the
from.
online campus.
Yeah.
Yep.
But on YouTube, we don't know.
That's right.
That's my
We
point.
don't. That's right. We don't know.
We don't know. Okay, also let us know if you were able to come to ValFest. How about that?
Oh, Belfast, it was cold, but it was a lot of fun. We
Yes.
have some dedicated volunteers, and a lot of people showed up to drive through and say, hey, wave at us.
That's
and
right.
say, this is fun.
That's right. Drop a heart in the comments if you came to ValFest.
Yes, that's
I
right.
see my parents are watching from Windsor. Good morning, Poppy and Grandma Phil. Good morning. My family was on the first one at 9. Yes, ValFest, it was cold in northern Colorado. I think wind chill was negative 15, right? Not the actual temp.
Right.
Actual temp was like 2.
Yeah, 2, 0, something, whatever. When it gets single digits, it's just whatever.
Kind of all the same, right?
Yeah, kind of the same. It's cold.
Kind of just wear your ski gear and you'll be okay. There's no such thing as too cold, just the wrong clothes. I hear something like that, right?
That is
I
great word.
literally had my ski pants, coats, gator, all of it. So we're ready here in Colorado. And it was really fun. We had amazing sponsors, crumble cookies, as people drove in.
Yes. Yeah. It was a great event.
It
Yeah.
was.
Good morning to Maria. Hey, Maria. Good
Hey.
to, good to
Oh,
see you.
yes, yes, good.
Yeah.
And good morning to Carrie and Jill. Yes, awesome. Yeah, what was I going to say, too? Crumble cookies, where was I at? I don't know.
Sponsors Belfast, just how great it was, really.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, it was a
it
great
really
event.
was, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was going to say, too, because many people have been through, like, Oktoberfest, Trunk or Treat.
Jingle Fest. Yeah.
This was a Valentine version. I just thought it was so fun to see people's creativity with what they came up with. I was like, what?
Yes.
So fun.
Yep. The dinosaurs made an appearance again with hearts. Yes, that was very,
Yes,
very
there
clever.
they are. I
Yes.
love. Every time that dinosaur comes out, I'm like, boomerang. I have to make a boomerang. in
Right.
this.
Very clever.
Yes, it was fun. So also, as you're tuning in, we have our kids pods. There's kids programming. You can be coming through.
Yes.
And going to that. I see people in here with the kids' busy bags. If you're just coming back to church in person and you're not ready to put your kids in programs too, we have busy bags.
Yes.
We also hand deliver bags and activities so that families can watch kids casts at their house.
That's
if they
right.
need
You
to
can
do
go
that.
right online, check the box, say, hey, please deliver that curriculum right to my doorstep. We also have a fantastic kids cast. I'm telling you, you have to check it out. Even if you don't have kids, check it out. Our team puts together a fantastic kids cast. It's very entertaining, and we have a great team that puts it together. Really, you've got to go and check out. I mean,
It is.
just as a cheer on there, it's very, very funny.
Yes. I love being part of the kids cast, and we totally have fun.
Yeah.
It really is like a fun kids show.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
It is. So anyway, even you grown-ups that like being playful,
Yes.
you'll enjoy it.
Yes, yeah. We have a great team. Very
Yes,
talented.
yes. So, and actually this week we're preparing March Kids Cast.
Right.
So we're on it. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this week also, wonderful week 1 of our Lent journey, which we'll get more into. It's so good to be together. So glad you're all here and you're all here online. We'll get started in 1 minute.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hi to everyone watching online. Hello to everyone in the room. If you're here with us, I invite you to stand. We're going to start by singing together.
There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into a room where people pray, where we hear praises he hears. There's a sound. There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into a room where people pray, where we hear worship he hears. Awake, my soul, and sing, sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Awake, my soul, and sing, sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud.
We are invited into the story, into this place, into this hour of worship. We are invited into reflection, into community, into our own spiritual journeys. We are invited. The broken and the bruised, the hopeful, the new, the faithful, the doubting, the wandering, the waiting. We are invited because God so loved. So listen, trust the invitation, and bring your whole self. All are invited here.
There is a sound that changes things, the sound of his people on their knees. Oh, wake up, you slumbering, it's time to worship him. Wake, my soul, and sing his praise, sing his praise. Awake, my soul, and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. And when he moves, and when we pray, where stood a wall, now stands the way, where every promise is amen. And when he moves, make no mistake, the bowels of hell begin to shake. I'll hail the Lord, I'll hail the King. Oh, let the King of Glory enter in. On your knees and worship him. Let his praise rise up, don't hold it in. Sing away. Awake, my soul, and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Awake, my soul, and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Amen. You can have a seat.
Welcome to the weekend. We're starting a journey of Lent, a brand new series, and we're full of gratitude for the memories made at ValFest. I'm Bree Williams, and here's a look back at the fun we had last Sunday. Yes, Valentine's Day was a day of record-breaking cold, but we decided to show up with our partners and living Valentines anyway. After all, we are all stuck in the middle of pandemic land, and everyone is hungry for fun and connection. Plus, we had 300 Valentine boxes to hand out, and everyone loves a red and pink Valentine's box. After church on Sunday, teams of cheerful volunteers cooked and served lunch for the workers, set up the property, and streamed into the parking lot to create living Valentines out of their cars and costumes. Soon enough, the families of Crossroads and guests from the community streamed through for a Valentine greeting. At the end, every guest was treated to a Valentine box of goodies stuffed full of love from our Partners in Family Ministries team. It was a simple day of community connection, and we needed it. Thank you to our partners. Thanks, team leaders and volunteers. It's fun to be part of Crossroads in Northern Colorado with you.
Good morning and welcome to the LiveCast. I am Wendy, and it is so great to be with you. Welcome to everyone joining us online, whether it's through our online campus, Facebook, or YouTube.
Yes, and I'm Jessica. It's so good to be with you as well. And now is a great time for us to pull out the Connect card. So if you're in the room with us, go ahead and pull out your paper Connect card. If you didn't get them, they're at the doors, your programs and Connect cards. If you're online with us, let's all go to crossroadscolorado.com/gather, and that's where you can access the digital Connect card. And this is a wonderful way for us to collect prayer requests, updated contact information. It's also where we conduct signups for things like the ValFest and things like that. So whether you are a first-time guest, second-time guest, or regular attender, it's something that we love to all fill out and let us know that we are here together.
That's right. And part of our weekly gathering experience is to give and support our church, and we are so grateful for your giving. We believe that we grow in generosity through our giving. You can give online or text the word Crossroads to 77977. You can also use Venmo by searching for the email venmo@crossroadscolorado.com. If you're in the room, you can drop your offering envelope along with your paper Connect card in the orange kiosk on your way out. I also want to thank you for giving above and beyond to our 2021 ministry emphasis, Peace is Worth It.
Yes, I love it. Okay, also this week we are beginning our journey of Lent through this beautiful Again and Again series. And many of you received this devotional book in the mail. And if you didn't and you're in the room here, we have them in the building here up on stage and at the Welcome Center and at some of the tables. And also, it's not too late to jump in. So you can take your Connect card and check or click on the digital one, Count Me In, and we will be sure to send you the daily devotions, scripture, prayer, and art, so you can still be a part of this.
And we're now going to turn it back to the band for some more great music.
Well, why don't we stand back up? We're going to continue singing. Why don't you sing with us? Maker,
know you are good. All your plans are for your glory. Yes, we can know you are good. Yes, we can know you are good. Lord, our God is ever faithful, never changing through the ages. From this darkness, you will lead us, and forever we will say, you're the Lord our God. We won't move without you. We won't move without you. You're the light of all and all that we need. We won't move without you. We won't move without you. You're the light of all and all that we need. We won't move without you. We won't move without you. You're the light of all and all that we need. We won't move without you. We won't move without you. You're the light of all and all that we need. The Lord our God is ever faithful, never changing through the ages. From this darkness, you will lead us, and forever we will say, you're the Lord our God. And forever we will say, you're the Lord our God. And forever we will say, you're the Lord our God is able, He will never fail. He is Almighty God, greater than all we see, greater than all we ask. He has done great things. Come on, let's sing. Lift Him up. He defeated the grave, raised to life. Our God is able. In His name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. God is with us. God is on our side. He will make a way. Far above all we know, far above all we hope. He has done great things. Lift it up. He defeated the grave.
Go ahead, have a seat.
I like to imagine that each year God invites me to a party. God drops me a note and says, "No gifts, casual dress, come just as you are." I like to imagine that I am brave enough to go. I like to imagine that I decide that I am worth it. This was no pity invite. There is no obligatory postage. God wants me there. So I get myself together. Smudged glasses, sensitive ego, wrinkled shirt and all, I ring the doorbell a few minutes late on an account of the fact that I lost my keys twice while trying to get out the door. And I almost turned back to hide in my car, afraid that I might embarrass myself over the appetizers or small talk. But then God answers the door. And God says, "You're here." And I smile because I am. And with every step past that threshold, I know that God is cheering me on. It's the pride of a parent watching their child take the first step. If I freeze, God is not disappointed. If I fall, God is not mad. But if I trust the invitation, if I move closer, I know God celebrates. Friends, you've got mail. It's an invitation to dust off your shoes, to go deeper, to trust that you're worth it, to lose your keys and your faith, and then to find them both along with your worth. You're invited. We are invited again and again and again. This invitation is for you.
Mask problems. How's everybody doing? Okay. Gotta have a master's degree to untangle this. Just talk amongst yourselves. There we go. Wait, oh, there it is. Give it up. All right. Good to see everybody. Thanks for connecting. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in online if you are logged in. And thank you if you're out in the atrium enjoying the sunshine. It's good to be with everyone today through all these different mediums. I love the line in that poem, which, by the way, that poem you can read in your Lent guide, the devotion book that was mailed out or that's on tables or as you came in, or you can do it digitally, whatever it wants. But that poem is there if you want to read through it again. You can do that. But I love the line in that poem that says, "The invitation is for you." Everybody loves an invitation, right? Usually, right? Usually everybody loves an invitation. There are some invitations that we don't love, but we do love to get a good invitation. How many of you have ever got an invitation that you weren't quite sure about? Anybody? Yeah. So, hey, just so you all know, up in the booth, the slides went away from me on the screen here. So I'm not sure what happened, but they'll get it fixed for us. So, yeah, I get invitations these days, a lot of invitations for Zoom. Do y'all get Zoom invites, Zoom invitations? Or I get the Google meeting invite. Yeah, the nice thing about the Google invite meeting is it teases me as if I could say no. Right, I get that choice. Yes, no, maybe, right? I'm not a big fan of it. And here's the thing about invitations. Not all of our invitations are welcome, right? Have you ever got an invitation, you saw it, and then all of a sudden, all you could think about was, how am I going to get out of this? Have you ever had that? Let's just be honest. Like somebody has invited you to come and help them move. Like, how could I get out of this? How could I not do this? Sometimes you get an invitation and you just think, what if I just gave them some money instead and then I don't have to go, right? Because some invitations are worrisome, right? We get that invitation, we think, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do. And some are wanted. Some of us really, there are invitations that we wish we would get, right? And we felt the sting of not getting the invitation. How many of y'all were ever invited to a party in high school, let's say? Anybody? I was not invited to a party. I was never in that group of, what's the word for it? Cool. Cool is probably the best word to describe what I was not ever. And it was interesting though, I kind of knew that, so it never really bothered me that I never got invited to a party, but that's just kind of the truth. But sometimes we feel left out because we don't get that invitation. Sometimes we feel slighted and it can be hurtful. And there are some invitations that we feel really good about. Now, why is that? Why is it that some invitations we want and some invitations we don't want? And I think it's because our experience with the who and our experience with the what of the invitation determines how we will emotionally respond to that, right? So if we've had a good experience with a person and they invite us to come over and hang out, we're like, yeah, that'll be fun. But if you had a bad experience with them and they invite you, right, that who goes, oh, I don't care what it is. No, thank you. Sometimes the what, though, can overwhelm the who. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like sometimes the what. So if I got invited by somebody to go watch a Denver Broncos game with their season tickets. I know who you are in this room. I know who has them. Or if I got invited to go watch the Denver Nuggets play the Boston Celtics. Like I could get over the who of that invitation probably, right? I could tolerate most of you go watch that game, right? Use your tickets, your gas, right? I could get over the miserable company, right? But sometimes the what feels so good, we'll get over it. Now here's the thing. So our topic today begins with this statement. And if you were paying attention or if you're in the room or if your eyes kind of clicked on when you started to hear voice speaking during that opening song, the key word there was invited. And so we're beginning with this premise in our journey of Lent that God is inviting us in again and again. Now, for some of you that are tuning in at home, listening in, you're thinking to yourself, I don't know about that invite. Like my experience with God, my experience with God's people has not been one that I'm all too keen on being invited back into. Right? Some of you are listening to this phrase, God invites us in again and again. There's a great deal of pain that comes with that because how God has been represented or how God has been experienced through people has left you feeling like an outsider, has left you feeling like the very person you are, all of who you are, couldn't possibly be accepted by God. That your gender wasn't good enough. Your sexuality didn't fit the way this person said it ought to. Your race wasn't quite what was accepted. And so to hear that God is inviting you in again and again promotes some problems. And then there are some who hear this invitation that God invites us in again and again. Your experience has been very positive. Right? Your experience, you've been able to fit into that kind of mold. You've been able to fit into that. It's made sense to you. And so to hear that God is inviting you in again and again can produce a wonderful response. But why such a difference? Why such a big spectrum, right? Do you ever wonder that? Like if God is constant, why is that? Well, because we all have different ideas and understandings of God. But I think a great place to look to understand the who of this invitation is Jesus. Right? So I come to kind of the scripture and the person of Jesus with this belief. It's a faith belief. I can't prove this. It's not something that I could, get down and give you a formula. But I come with this faith that says Jesus is the best visible expression of the invisible God that is love. That when we look at the life of Jesus, what we know about Jesus, I come in faith to that person and says, this is the fullness of God in human embodiment. And so Jesus can give us a great idea of the who behind this invitation. And I want to look at one sentence, a couple sentences actually, that Jesus made in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30, to just get the who behind the invitation. Because I don't think we can get to the point where do we want to accept the invitation? Do we want to live? Until we can kind of say, well, who is this that's inviting me? And one thing that Jesus tells us in this statement and that Jesus reveals to us is that this God who invites us in is one that cares for us again and again. Listen to what Jesus says in Matthew 11. Jesus says, come to me, all you who labor and are burdened. I love that Jesus has the sensitivity to recognize somebody that's weary and labored and burdened, frustrated, just exhausted. Y'all ever been exhausted? Raise your hand up nice and high if you ever been exhausted. Some of you are exhausted right now. Wrap this up, Ryan. I can't deal with it. right? We labor. And Jesus, who represents God, who is God in flesh, honors that and doesn't gloss over it and doesn't say, oh, come on, toughen up. No. That there is a caring nature to this God. Jesus also helps us and reveals to us that this God who invites us in not only cares for us again and again, but regenerates us again and again. Regenerates us, renews us, revives us, right? This is what he says. He says, come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. I love that Jesus doesn't say, come to me, all you labor and burdened, and I'll tell you how you're doing it wrong. I'll make sure you know, here's the 6 steps to get further. No. He says, I'm going to give you rest. Rest is regenerative, right? Rest is that thing which physical rest, it renews our strength. Spiritual rest renews our spiritual well-being and our mental health. And this is what God wants to do. This is a God that invites us and says, hey, here's the deal. I'm going to give you this wonderful thing called rest. And rest can restore and regenerate hope when hope is lost. When our souls can find rest, we all of a sudden start to see, like, if the storehouse of hope has been diminished, all of a sudden we can pause and rest in love's care, and all of a sudden we just start to feel that hopefulness again. Our energy goes up from rest, physical rest. You know, sometimes we just get so tired, and then we start to engage in a conversation with our spouse or our partner, and all of a sudden we're like, we need to stop this, and I need to get some rest, and then we can pick up the conversation. And then we're kind of ready for it because our mental health, and this is what God does. God is inviting us in again and again to find rest, to be regenerated. And in a place of regeneration, with the storehouses full, Jesus reveals that this is a God who invites us and offers us gentle wisdom again and again. That this God of the universe, this thing that is behind creation, that is behind the good, that is behind our well-being, says, I have something to say to you. I have a way for you, a way of life for you. And I love that it's gentle wisdom. Y'all ever experience like arrogant wisdom? How wonderful is that? You ever work for that person who just knows, and they know that they know everything, and they get frustrated at you because you don't know everything. And then when they try to show you something, all you want to do is quit, right? Why is Jess raising her hand? She should not put her hand down. No. Right? We have those people in our lives that when they give us their wisdom, they do it in an arrogant way. They do it in a way that they can't believe you couldn't possibly understand. How could you be so stupid? Thank you. Somebody needs to check their parenting. No, I'm just kidding. Right? That's how we feel. Right? There are those people that they make us feel like we are not smart, like we're not there, we couldn't possibly get it. But Jesus offers us an understanding and reveals a God that says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Right? The act of wisdom is learning, for I'm meek and humble of heart. In other words, you can get what I'm giving you in a pace that you'll understand. Like my humility allows me to go at your pace, to walk with you. As you can grasp it, I can give it. And I'm not going to give you more than you can grasp. And because of that, because I'm meek and humble and I give wisdom to you in a gentle way, you'll find rest. This idea of a yoke, by the way, was the way in which people would talk about a body of teaching, like what a rabbi would say to the people who followed that rabbi's way of understanding God and living out their faith, per se. This is how the world works. And so you'd follow that rabbi, you'd put their yoke on you. And Jesus says, the yoke that I offer is different than the one that has burdened you down. And so Jesus, in these few statements, reveals that this is a God who cares about us, that this is a God who invites us to recognize that you can be regenerated again and again and again. And this is a God that says, I'm gentle, that I'll walk with you, that I will unveil and reveal myself to you and my plans for your life in a pace that doesn't scare you. I know that I think about my life and I look back and say, man, if God would have told me where I'd be today 25 years ago, I'd have been like, whoa. I couldn't have handled it. I think about things that I believed and thought about God 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, and where I was if God would have said, here's the deal, Ryan, you're going to have a fuller understanding of love and of God, and it's going to look like this in 15 years. I'd be like, oh, that's the devil. That's the devil trying to deceive me. But God's just gently walking with us if we will come alongside and accept this invitation. And what's so powerful is not only does Jesus reveal the who of the invitation, but Jesus reveals a lot about the what of the invitation in this. Because he says it again, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And what is this? This is an invitation into a mercy-filled relationship, not a law-filled performance, right? The people that Jesus would have been speaking to, they were used to a yoke that was heavy, a burden of the law, a burden of rules to follow, to make sure that you were in, to make sure that God would welcome you, to make sure that you had it all right, and that you wouldn't be cursed by this God who sat on a throne, very temperamental. And Jesus says, hold on a second. No. My yoke is different. And so Jesus reveals a mercy-filled God that invites us into a rest-filled way of living again and again. And here's the thing, everything around us wants to push us out of that rest-filled way of living. And that's why we gather once a week, because we need to be reminded that we're called into a different path. We need to be reminded that we're called into a different way of being. And the only way we can embrace that and receive that invitation is to know fully that God is filled with mercy and is welcoming everybody in and is calling all of us into this space. Our anchor verse for this Lent season, the one that I would encourage everybody to memorize, comes from a very interesting book of the Bible called Lamentations, which was written at kind of the low point of the nation of Israel. They had been exiled, their homes had been burned, their religion had been crushed, their God had been destroyed by the gods of the Babylonians. It was a bad deal. And in the midst of all that pain, this is what the poet writes. The Lord's acts of mercy are not exhausted. His compassion is not spent. This is a mercy-filled God, that it can't possibly exhaust God of all the mercy. Why? Because his mercies are new every morning. They are renewed each morning. Great is your faithfulness. See, God's fidelity, his faithfulness, love's faithfulness in your life and my life is not based upon my ability to serve, to do, to be. It's based upon that God, his mercy flows every day. Every day it's new. Every day God says, come to me. Let's walk this path at your pace, in your way. I'm going to have Pastor Katie come out. She's going to help us understand something pretty amazing about this mercy-filled God's invitation. That this mercy-filled God is inviting us again and again into this relationship. But here's what's so powerful. This mercy-filled God doesn't just leave us to figure it out on our own. Doesn't say, hey, I'll catch you on the other side. But this mercy-filled God meets us again and again.
Thanks, Ryan. Hey, did Ryan mention when he started that the Melissa, who recited the poem on the video, that's his sister? Did he tell you that? I wasn't listening at the very beginning. That's why I'm really genuinely asking you that. No, he didn't. He's too humble of a person to brag about the depth of talent in his family, but it's there. Yeah, and Melissa and her family join us from Maine, so they're part of our Orange Dots network. Well, it's good to see all of you here in the room at the Taft Avenue facility. I see your smiling eyes. Ryan and I had a conversation with a person, and we spoke with this person after the last service for quite some time. We're talking about the password to something, helping this person. We thought we were speaking to David Grossman, who produces our video for the Kids Cast. This person at the end says, oh, hey, nice to meet you. By the way, my name is Anthony. We know David Grossman really well, and with the mask on, Anthony looked exactly like David Grossman. Isn't that weird? You know, these are strange times. We're in pandemic land, but good news, a mercy-filled God meets us again and again, and thank you, Ryan, for really painting a picture. Who is this God, and exactly what might these meetings be like? My personal story of meeting with God is that despite the fact that my family wasn't very churchy, I somehow came to faith as a very young child. And then I came into spiritual leadership as a very young adult. And that was probably because of a love that I had for the wisdom of Scripture, probably for passages like what Ryan just taught out of, beautiful words from Jesus. Come to me, everyone who's weary and overburdened, and I'll give you rest. Beautiful words like there are three things that will last forever: faith and hope and love, and the greatest of these is love. I was captured by the wisdom of Scripture, probably drew me in to spiritual leadership. Also very desirous of living my own life as a spiritual journey. I wanted that. I was on a quest for meaning, for wholeness, and probably for joy that I somehow knew came to us from God. And I was grateful to have been found by that. Early in my life, I wanted to see that in my own household, the people that I live with on a day-to-day basis, my church, the people that I'm in spiritual community with, my society, our civic life. I was a social studies teacher for a little bit of time before I was a pastor. And so I have this longing that our civic life would be civil and whole and full of joy. Can you imagine how I feel right now, watching what's going on all around us? It's that a little bit of a hard time in our civic life, but still that dream or that vision that life is a spiritual journey captured me. And yet in all of this experience, I can never say that I found God. It wasn't like that. God surprised me at turns and found me, met with me over and over again. When I was on the ball, faithful with the spiritual journey, kind of in tune, and when I was out of touch, not even a no-show, at my own meeting, God would keep finding me. And I discovered a lot of meaning in these meetings, almost never when they're happening, just like all of you. It's always in a looking back, discovering the meaning, most of it happening just on ordinary days, God showing up in the sunshine or, the love of a favorite pet or a child or, an important person in my life. But some of these meetings, these again and agains, have been such stunning experiences that they've set the trajectory for my life. And I think that's part of the spiritual journey as well. We're all looking for spiritual direction. You wouldn't be here at 9 or 11 at Taft Avenue or tuning in the LiveCast if you weren't looking for spiritual direction. We're all looking for that. And I found that in the meeting with God again and again. And there's a pattern here. There's a pattern of God's nearness in our lives and also an intermittent breaking in. And at times of magical moments. A pattern of everyday nearness and intermittent flashes at magical moments. The problem is, though, it's easy to miss it. It's easy to miss it. The hindsight is always better, but we can learn to watch for it in the present moment as well. And we don't want to miss it because the meetings with God will change the quality of your day-to-day life, your moment-to-moment existence. They will also inform the trajectory of your life. And this happened in the life of Jesus. There's a story in the Gospel of Mark where again and again God meets Jesus in these ways I'm beginning to describe. Now, this is a short story because Mark's writing style is short, crisp, but it's full of meaning and direction. So in just 7 verses, we can see three significant events in the life of Jesus and how they set him on a course for the spiritual journey, in his case to be part of bringing God's vision to all of humankind. So let's read, and then we'll double back. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." And the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days, tempted by Satan. And he was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him. Now, after John was arrested, Jesus came to Galilee proclaiming the good news of God. Now let's double back and look closely at this series of meetings. The first is that God met Jesus at his baptism. God met Jesus in the event of his baptism. And there's meaning in Jesus' baptism. His cousin John had been preaching in a rural region all around Jerusalem, and it had reached a point where crowds were coming out of Jerusalem, very diverse crowds coming from Jerusalem and all over the region and gathering at the Jordan River for baptism. And baptism to them, to John, was a sign that they wanted to change their lives and they wanted to change their hearts. This was a corporate moment of cultural conversion. It was public. It was widespread. There was a widespread openness to a new way of spiritual life and to a new way of political life and ideas. And the crowds were eager for new, and they were coming out for it. There was much anticipation. Mark tells us nothing about the events of Jesus' life until this moment. No nativity, no baby Jesus, no Mary, none of that. Just begins right there. And he notes with importance that Jesus had traveled 100 kilometers from his home stomping grounds, his birthplace area in Galilee, south to this Jerusalem area to take part in what was happening there. And we might expect a spiritual and political Messiah, as we understand Jesus to have been, to greet his new followers like kings would have before, at least as a very important spiritual leader, some kind of an anointing, a coronation, executive orders, starting to fill his administration, making speeches. Jesus doesn't do any of that. He just steps in line with fellow community members. And what's notable of that is that Jesus was joining in solidarity, first and foremost, with the poor and with the oppressed. He is identifying with them, positioning himself as one of us. And we'll see this again and again in his life. He doesn't seek attention, but he steps into the waters, from the edge of the river shore into the waters, and opens up to receive God's blessing, favor, affirmation, and very powerfully, this voice comes from heaven and says, "You're my beloved, and in you I'm well pleased." And in our devotions for next week, there's a lovely painting of this scene that comes to us from Reverend Liesl Gwynn Garrity. And she makes comment on the baptism and its meaning of this man, Jesus, stepping into the water, opening up spiritually, receiving the favor of God like pouring rain, and then the voice saying, "You're my beloved child, and I am pleased with you. We are family. I claim you." And that was the experience of the baptism. So in this meeting, God of human flesh steps out alongside, ordinary human beings, the people he's going to be healing and teaching and feeding and caring for. And then God in spirit meets Jesus in that moment at the threshold of something new. Before Jesus begins to work, before he proves anything about himself, that identity of family and that affirmation of his essence is what everything will flow from. That's the source of God's power, or of Jesus' power. So God meets Jesus at the baptism, and then God meets Jesus in his wilderness. In the wilderness, second event. And the wilderness was the place where his character was tested. Oh, who likes to have their character tested? Worst thing in all of life. Brutal, right? Hard stuff. He's been to the water's edge. He's met the crowds. He knows what the movement's going to be all about. He knows he's a teacher, and he knows God. And he's going to be tested. God leads him into the wilderness. It says the Spirit led, and is maybe saying, "Okay, so son, family member, we're in this together. How are we to accomplish this mission? How are we going to do this?" And there was an accuser called Satan. And the accuser is not, leading all this, but the accuser is there, knows that human beings are typically, always, too wounded to be trustworthy with God's vision and power. And so there's this testing or this schooling that occurs. The accuser's not the teacher. The accuser's just kind of providing some momentum here and making some trouble. And Jesus is confronted by God, I believe. How are you going to use the power that you've, inherited, that's in your deep connection with God? You're going to use it to help people, or are you going to use it to control people? What's your understanding of the spiritual life, Jesus? Is it this journey like Ryan just talked about? Or is it something else? Is it a life of secret tricks and magic wands? The one who commands it just presto changeo, here's a good future for all of us. Or an attitude, I've got God on my side. I got God's power. I can stand on the highest building and just jump off, and my God will catch me. We've all heard that kind of spirituality, haven't we? We've heard it before. I don't have to wear a mask in a raging pandemic. I'm invincible. I've got faith. My God will protect me. You can't tell me what to do. And then just to kind of, protect oneself in case one does die in the pandemic. Well, we're all going to die. It's a flu. It may get more of us. But I've got faith, and that's how I'm going to walk through this. We've heard that kind of spirituality. We've heard those connections made between God's power in us, and what the life of faith is like. And Jesus was tested for these attitudes. Jesus was tested for spiritually abusive or just naive or misguided attitudes. And Jesus was found trustworthy to move forward, trustworthy for the care of vulnerable human beings who would look to him for spiritual guidance. In the wilderness, God was near, and angels were sent to comfort Jesus. The text says that angels waited on Jesus, and I've heard it said that God was absent in the wilderness. That's what makes it so awful, and sent angels to do the carrying. Or that God was absent or turned his back on Jesus on the cross and sent women to care and show compassion. It's not how I see this. I believe with all my heart that God is always as close to any of us as our very breath, the air inside us, the air surrounding our bodies. But there are times in the wilderness when our character is being tested. It's so awful and debilitating that God sends extra people, extra spiritual companions, extra angels, those kinds of moments. And so God was there. And then the final meeting scene is when cousin John was arrested and pulled out of the theater. And God met Jesus in the arrest of his cousin John the Baptist. The text says that after John was arrested, Jesus returned to Galilee and began proclaiming the good news of God. He begins his teaching and his healing ministry without John's help. And John was the baptizer. John was the spiritual gatherer who got that community together. And now Jesus is going to continue that, but without John. And this must have been a hard experience. After being affirmed by God at the Jordan River, looking forward to something so dynamic, feeling the favor of God, and then the rigors of the wilderness, coming out of that depleted and then losing your cousin. So we have these arrests in our lives, and God is there with us in that. It's the plan B moments when God is there. It's not what we're expecting, but God is there. And in all these things, there's a common thread. And don't miss this. The common thread is God's closeness. God's closeness. Closer than the air you breathe. God is with us in these life meetings. And so what does this mean to us as peacemakers? That's our term for, disciples and Christ followers. We're peacemakers, called into the theater, into the arena, to live this pattern that Jesus has shown us, to be on that spiritual journey. What does it mean? Well, we can look back on our lives and see how God meets us again and again and again. The first poem in this next week's devotions is Remember When. And it's an invitation to look back on your life and remember your meetings with God. And I think you'll find it a very good prompt. And you're going to be surprised and you're going to be encouraged. I did it last week. I'm trying to stay a week ahead of all of you so that I know what's coming and what it's all about. I did it. I did that remembering. And I remember when God invited me to work here at this church, I was very excited. It was like a baptism. It was like an affirmation. It was like tip your head back and let the rain hit your face and open yourself up spiritually and feel God's favor. And perhaps you've stepped into opportunities before where there was something like that and you feel affirmed and invited. and it feels good. But soon after that moment, I went into a wilderness experience of testing. My character was brutally tested. I was a female pastor in senior leadership in a somewhat mega church a decade ago, and it was pretty much unheard of. And it set off a horrible testing for me personally, for our church Crossroads. I'm just speaking for myself personally, there were many ramifications for the whole church family, but I became a lightning rod for criticism, false accusations. But the real testing for me was an encounter with God. And it wasn't coming from the brutality of my accusers, as awful as that was. My character test happened in meetings with God. They were conversations like, so Katie, you wanted to teach and lead in a large setting. How's that going for you? How exactly do you plan to accomplish a mission this large? How do you plan to make it through the day-to-day management of what all of this means that you thought you wanted with your humanity intact and without leveraging, some power that would be inappropriate and destructive to yourself or to other people? What tactics are you going to pick up? What will your tools be? What's your leadership ethic? What is your vision of the spiritual life? Is it that journey like Ryan described? Do you really believe in that? Because if you're all in for that and that's what you're going to be teaching, that's a little countercultural to what a lot of people sign up for in their religion. And it might not be liked. And you're going to have to answer for it. It's going to be hard. What protective armor are you using? What do you have on? And what would happen if you laid it down in the arena? What would leadership be like then? It was hard. I answered to God in the wilderness. I can say that God was always close and faithful to me, and God sent friends to help me, extra people. I can see their faces right now. And eventually I emerged from the wilderness with my human dignity slowly restored by God. Because God met me again and again, and God meets you again and again. To reestablish your identity, those are like baptism moments, as a beloved child, to name you, make that clear. To equip you, like happens in the testing of our character, the lessons, and then to send you out to proclaim the goodness of God because it comes fresh through these pivotal moments. We get fresh vision of who God is, and we have new stories to tell and new songs to sing. I remember in that wilderness just lying on my bed at night, actually sometime after it, probably 2 years after it, and realizing I think my feet are on the rock again. And thinking of the words of Psalm 40, I cried to God and he answered. And he lifted me out of the miry pit and set my feet on a rock and put a new song in my heart. And that sending part, Jesus went to his hometown and began to preach and heal and teach. You are sent as a peacemaker into new arenas and new settings through these meetings. Because when God meets you, it signals a shift. It signals a shift. It could be from the mud pit to the solid ground. It's oftentimes from navel gazing, like we've got some dream, but it's sort of all about me, to like, oh no, this is about community. And this is what this looks like in community. From infantile spiritual demands, petty stuff, to a big vision of justice for all. Or giving ourselves to God's work of justice for all. And always in that character test, away from behaviors that interfere with God's vision for the world. Always away from behaviors that interfere. That's a shift. Again and again, your mercy-filled God will meet you at the edge of something good. And it is not a landing place, it's a passageway. Or as some would say, a thin place or liminal space. It's a stepping into something new. It's a threshold. And remember that we don't go out looking for this. We can't manufacture it. We can't engineer it. It's God who finds us and takes us into these moments. Amazing grace. I once was lost, and now I found God. It's not very poetic sounding or true. I once was lost and now it's a statement of identity. I am found. That's my name. I'm found. And the founder is out there doing the acting and leading me into these moments. So we can't make it happen, but there's something we can do. Peacemakers, you can accept the invitation and meet God in prayer. You can meet God in prayer. The thing that you can do is create a prayer world. You can create a dimension to your life, and God will help you do this, a dimension to your life where there's a time and a rhythm that brings you joy, where you meet with God, where you fill yourself with good ideas. What are the scriptures or the scriptural, books that, the spiritual books that bring good ideas into your world and form your worldview? That's always a part of it, good ideas. And then sacred places and spaces in this world. For many of us, it's nature. That'll come up in our devotions in this next week. Many of you find your prayer world as it exists. The setting for it is largely the natural world, because you can't help meeting with God when you stand at the edge of the ocean, or you're in the mountains, or you're under a tree with your beloved pet by your side. And this is a work of creation. We create a prayer world. And that's what we can do. It's our place and our space for meeting with God. Well, what is God inviting you into today? I just talked about what I think I want you to do, and that's not really the question of the hour. What's hooked you? What's God inviting you into today? It might be to accept a better invitation into a mercy-filled and rest-filled life. What Ryan spoke about might have captured your interest. That's what I want. I don't want the treadmill of spirituality. I want this spiritual journey with the different kind of yoke. Or perhaps God's inviting you to step into a new prayer world and join that journey of Lent. If you join that journey of Lent, you don't have to do all the creating. That's why we're doing a creative one. You'll be prompted and guided through it, and at the end of the 40 days, you'll say, I have a new world. I have a new world. I never thought I'd have that. Or perhaps it's to step out for justice for all and start a peacemaking venture or join in on one. Maybe you're already an action-oriented person in your spirituality, or it's time to get from the navel gazing and lift your head and make peace for other people like Jesus did. Well, this next song is called Beloved. It's about our identity. It's about our essence. Let it wash over you. Let it reestablish who you really are.
You've owned your fear and all your self-loathing. You've owned the voices inside of your head. You've owned the shame and reproach of your failure. It's time to own your belovedness. You've owned your past and how it's defined you. You've owned everything everybody else says. It's time to hear what your Father has spoken, and it's time to own your belovedness. He says you're mine. I smiled when I made you. I find you beautiful in every way. My love for
We believe in a God who is everywhere and right here, bigger than the sky and in the smallest details, all at once and in every moment. We believe that God meets us where we are, in heartbreak and high hopes, around crowded tables and in quiet homes, in joy and in suffering, in loneliness and in connection, in sanctuaries and in living rooms, in marches and in waiting rooms. We believe that nothing we do or leave undone can distance us from God's love. God is forever drawing us close and pulling us in. Again and again, God meets us where we are and invites us into wholeness. Thanks be to God for a love like that.
You are completely loved and fully known. Beloved, believe me, died to make your heart his home. He says you're mine. I smiled when I made you. I find you beautiful in every way. My love for you is fierce and unending. I'll come to find you wherever it takes. He says you're mine. I smiled when I made you. I find you beautiful in every way. My love for you is fierce and unending. I'll come to find you whatever it takes. My beloved, it's time to own your belovedness.
Well, thank you for being a part of our experience today, whether you were online in the atrium or here in the room. I hope it was meaningful. I hope you heard today that God is filled with mercy and is inviting you in again and again to a peace-filled relationship, a peace-filled life where this God will meet you again and again. And so as you head out today, I hope that that sticks in your heart. I hope that you'll participate in the readings and the reflections throughout the week to just kind of let it take root in you. And then next week, as we gather, whether online or in person or in the atrium, we're going to explore this idea that again and again, God invites us to listen. So as you head out this morning, as you log off today, if you're in the room, you can drop your Connect card in one of the orange kiosks along with your offering envelope. Thank you so very much. If you're tuning in online, you can go ahead and fill out that digital Connect card and then hit the link for giving, or you can text the word Crossroads to give. And if you'd like prayer, if you're here in this space today, we have some folks that would love to pray with you. You can just come right up here. If you're online, just click that live prayer button and someone will pray with you this morning. I hope that you have an amazing week. I hope you'll do me a favor. That you'll look for opportunity to love people, to encourage people, to be the hands and feet of Jesus in this world. Have an awesome week, everybody.
April showers in the month of May. The ground's still wet and the sky's still gray, but you're pieces of chords to play.